Mike Messier, and welcome to Messier Mantra. On this episode, we have a very good friend of mine, a special guest. His name is Gary Parent. Hi, Gary.
How you doing, Mike?
I'm doing good. And I'm glad to have you here because we're friends in the South County, Rhode Island region, but I've seen you in Providence and different places. Yeah. And your list of credentials is pretty long, but I'll say this. We'll start with, you're an author of this really cool book, Prisoners of Our Own Beliefs. You're a visual artist. Yep. It also says here on your business card that I took a peek at, it says motivational coach or life coach type of thing.
Yes.
So tell me about yourself, Gary.
Well, I grew up in Arno, Maine, and graduated from high school. I couldn't read or write. So I had started some businesses. I was actually a non-reading, non-writing sign painter for years, and I did work all over the world because I can actually paint in any language because I couldn't read them anyway. So letters to me are images.
Wow.
And when I was 38, I had already started one of my businesses and found out I'm dyslexic.
Yes.
And of course, when I was young, they were still pounding the wheel around, so they didn't know about dyslexia in school.
Right.
And that traveled, and like I said, it took me all over the world. It was a horrifying time, but it was a great time.
Right.
And it took me a long, long time because I'd go out with a customer, right? And it could be like a big hospital.
Right.
And they would tell me what they wanted, and I'd pretend I'd write it down.
Wow.
So there was that whole embarrassment of that.
Right.
And then I realized, well, why don't I just give them a tablet and tell them that I want to make sure everything is right when I take it back.
Yep.
Took all kinds of pressure off me.
Yep.
So I started my businesses, and I had 2 sign shops, a gift shop, apartments. I had the whole thing. Got divorced and bought a van, and I had a little cash built up. So I spent 6 years living in my van, traveling around the United States.
Wow.
Taught myself to read and write. And in that process of learning to read and write, I wrote that book.
Let's talk about, because you and I have talked about this, as friends in our history. That must have been, I would imagine, so painful, as you said, kind of embarrassing, or maybe you didn't have people to talk to about it, weren't sure who you'd trust to talk about it. But what I find, there's so many things, we can talk about that all day, but we'll keep it for a few minutes. But was there, I don't want to say a reason, but maybe a reason, was there a situation that led to your not learning initially as a kid how to read and write? Was there something that happened that you want to talk about, or is that too?
Well, basically because I was dyslexic and they couldn't figure out that I was having this learning issue. I was just labeled as a kid. As long as it showed up, they passed me.
Wow.
So, I mean, that's basically what happened to me in school.
Fell through the cracks.
Yes. Took 15 years to get from first grade to graduate from high school.
And that's pretty amazing. When we move forward, and then that time when you were in the van traveling the country, having done already a bunch of really profoundly powerful things, and you said you taught yourself how to learn to read and write. Was that just a gradual thing that just you started picking up newspapers, or was there an aha moment? You said, enough of this, I got to really get this accomplished. Was there something like that, Gary?
Yeah, what happened was, at a point in my business, I was in that business 7 days a week for 12 years because I couldn't remember where I left off if I stopped.
Yes.
So that's what was going on there. But when I didn't have any place to go, I decided it was time to actually go do something I've been putting off my whole life, and that was learn to read and write. And what I did was I bought a book and a book on tape.
Okay.
And that's why I needed to get away in the van.
Wow.
I'd listen to the tape.
Yes.
After I stopped the van, I'd listen to the tape and I'd try to follow in the book, and I just started memorizing words, and if books were darts, I'd be all over the country because it was very frustrating for me.
Was there any, I mean, just I like books on tape myself, just to listen to them. Was there any particular book that you remember, book or books that were in your canon, so to speak, that you liked?
My big influence was Robert Kiyosaki, Rich Dad, Poor Dad.
Okay.
That whole series of books. Wayne Dyer.
Yes.
Campbell.
Yep.
Just actual motivational speakers and things to keep me focused, to keep me in line with my goal. And writing my book, trying to.
Right.
I have boxes full of notebooks where I was writing and rewriting and writing and rewriting. And there was a lot of aha moments in an actual writing process. I knew when I was reading what I had written,
Yes.
I had repeated a paragraph in there. It might be 3 down,
Yeah.
but I couldn't find it. By the time I found it and knew I'd repeated it, I couldn't remember where it was above.
Right.
It took me about a year to be able to read clear enough and memory-wise to know where that was happening.
Okay. Yeah.
And you being a writer,
right.
you know, when you write, you really need to know that you didn't repeat something on the way down, unless you meant to.
Well, the funny, I mean, it's as you were explaining that, I was having flashbacks just to yesterday afternoon when I was doing some screenwriting, and kind of what you were saying was representative of a little mini issue I was having with writing a script with the word, and so I could definitely relate to what you were saying there, but I can just imagine, and you know, as a lot of people, I have things as a childhood that still bother me, so I can relate to everything you're saying here, and I find it profoundly interesting. And you know, I told you I was going to do this. Sometimes with books, the fun thing is you can kind of just pick them up and then quickly, if you don't mind, flip to a page and find something fun. So I want to start with something. If you don't mind, I'm going to give this a shot.
Yeah, love it.
This is from Gary Parent's book, Prisoners of Our Own Beliefs. Awaken to a new freedom of endless potential, passion, and power. So let's check this out. All your decisions come from what you believe. The more connected you are to what, you know what? Let's have you read it if you don't mind. If you don't,
okay.
So go
You're
from
really
there about there. Yeah, no. I just want to hear the speaker's voice.
After I wrote this book, it took me 3 months to read it once.
Wow.
So, all your decisions come from what you believe. The more connected you are to who you are and what you truly want, the less you will care about what your circle of influence believes. And your circle of influence, that's the people that are around you.
Yes.
Okay? So, why is that important? Because if they don't like it, that's just too bad. And that's worth repeating. If someone in your life does not like what you're saying or doing, then that's just too bad.
Yes.
Whose life is this anyway?
Right.
It's my life.
Yeah.
So, you want to stop there? Or?
Yeah. In fact, I might play another round of this game because I like this book a lot. Because of page 91, because of the years of punishment everyone around you has placed upon you for so long, their words of criticism still control your life. Even though some of the people from your negative circle of influence are not even around you anymore, their words echo in your mind. Now this reminds me of something I learned in a class in college. I'll give the professor, Dr. Zornato, credit. Yeah. He was a teacher, actually an English teacher. He had a theory that I'm sure he learned from somewhere about the mother culture. And in this mother culture, everyone, practically everyone, who has become an adult and gone through childhood, which is a tough time for a lot of us, has got some type of mother culture, whether it's the actual literal mother or a father or a society in general or the TV or brother, sister, cousin, whatever. Someone who's basically belittled us, beaten us down, mocked us. I experience this a lot as an acting coach with people that want to be actors who haven't had that opportunity or haven't made the opportunity for themselves. And a common reason cited is because, you know, Daddy told me I was silly, or Mommy said I was no good, or
they were acting out as a child.
Right.
And they got basically embarrassed or punished, verbally punished for doing that.
Yep. So, Gary, people like myself who might be surrounded by people who are a bit negative and have a, as you say, a negative circle of influence, how do people, or people watching the show, how do they break away from those negative individuals in their lives? I mean, does one, you know, like a kid who has a parent who's negative, or, you know, because some of these situations are pretty tough. What do you suggest?
That is a very difficult situation, and it should never be taken lightly, but you need to find a place, I call it Castle of Silence.
Okay.
And it's just a place where you can go, be alone, read books that expand your mind. I don't care if it's travel, you know, something that you can get lost in.
Right.
Or a movie, something you get lost in that has a great message to it. And stay connected to that message. One of the things that I did that really helped me a lot was I created a third person in the room.
Okay.
When I was having a conversation with someone, up here, there was a filter. It was like another mind that would come, and it would go to there first, and when it came to me, I didn't have a reaction to it.
Okay.
Because I understood that what they were telling me was the story they tell themselves every day to steal their dreams, and I should not be influenced by that.
Wow.
And that's really important. That's an incredible lesson to learn. When people tell you their stories, they're not telling their stories to steal your dreams. That's a story they tell themselves every day to steal their own dreams. And if we get lost in their story, then we'll end up doing the same thing, and we'll start paying that forward.
Wow. The negative, at that point, it's not even a negative. Is it a negative cycle or a negative tradition almost?
It is a tradition.
Yeah.
It is a tradition, yes. Because we end up being parrots of what we are influenced by. Okay? And once our self-confidence is broken down, because a lot of times people use words as knives to stab each other with.
Right.
So realize those words come from their upbringing and they don't have to influence you. And
it's very tough, you know, as kids, especially children, you know, and hopefully no kids going through that, you know, watching the show, but it probably is, you know, or people are watching the show as adults and they remember, hey, you know, I had some things like that when I was a kid, but parents going through their own issues, whether it's financial or marital dismiss rather than marital bliss, you know, or problems with drugs and alcohol, whatever that might be in the family unit, and the kid, you know, or kids are growing up with this type of situation, you know, it's so hard.
a perfect example is when the stock market crashed.
Yeah.
And you have the depression parents that raise the children.
Yeah.
Okay? And they have that mentality.
Right.
When we actually live in a world of abundance.
Right.
Everything is around us, but we're taught scarcity.
Yes.
Okay? So we tend to feel that way. We're going to run out of gas. We're going to run out of milk. We're going to run out of money. One of the great lessons I learned when I had my sign shops was if you work by the hour for pay,
yes,
your pay can be taken away from you anytime you want. Anytime that somebody wants to, you can take it away. All you do is quit.
Right.
And your income stops
right.
the day you quit. Authors like Stephen King, I grew up by Stephen King.
Yeah.
Anybody, doesn't matter who is, Tom Clancy, whoever. They have passive income. They never have to write a day in their life. Their books are still going to sell.
Right.
Movie stars have that.
Right.
They get royalties.
Yes.
Some. If you're at the top, then you're going to get royalties from those movies, and that income will outlive you.
Right.
Whereas if you work by the hour for an hourly wage, the day you don't show up is the day your pay stops.
Wow.
And Buckminster Fuller, who I used to listen to a lot,
yep.
said, and this was on his patent for the geodesic dome. Somebody was looking at the patent, and on the bottom of the page it said that wealth is determined by how long you can live your current lifestyle the day you lose your job.
Wow. Yeah.
So if you can last a week, that's your wealth.
Your wealth is a week. Yeah.
And that gets passed on to children.
Right.
Because scarcity creates scarcity.
Yeah. And anxiety.
Yes, in the language.
Right.
In the body language, in the words. And, you know, if you're riding down the road in your car, and God knows I've had this happen many times, and you start hearing that knock in the motor, or you hear something going wrong with your car,
right.
You don't have the money to fix it, you panic.
Yeah.
But somebody who has the money, it's an inconvenience.
Right.
At best.
Interesting. Let's keep looking to this. Dream big, run fast, challenge life, go for it. It's about time. Now, what I like about that is, but live big. You know, that's what I get. Dream big, live big, be fast. And you had all the exclamation points.
Right, don't be afraid.
Right.
Because the fear is what is keeping you from getting what you want in life.
What are people generally afraid of, Gary, in your experience with working with folks?
They're afraid of their own story.
Okay.
And the story they have been taught to believe by other people.
Yes.
It's not true. It's like I talk to people. I was talking to a gentleman the other day. He's a math teacher. I said, how do you know you're good at math? Well, I'm a teacher. No, that wasn't the question. How do you know you're good at math?
Right.
Because I was told I was good at math. And we had been talking earlier, he said he wasn't very good at carpentry. I said, how do you know that? So what you believe about yourself, it was Henry Ford that said, if you believe you can, or you believe you can't, you're right. It's true for every single person.
Yeah.
I mean, he invented what he invented because he just thought he could.
Yeah.
And it changed the world. I'm not saying it was for the better, but he changed the world.
Well, for the different, anyway.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. That's great. Why did you title the book Prisoners of Our Own Beliefs?
Because the story we tell ourselves either creates our successes or our failures.
Yeah.
And nobody has ever been successful without failing along the way. So, again, it goes back to your circle of influence.
Right.
If they have stolen your confidence
Yes.
to go out, some people can't even say hello to another person.
Yeah.
And it's unbelievable to me. I did kind of grow up that way. But I know what it's like to feel like you can't do something, because that is exactly how I grew up.
Yes.
And I was in an automobile accident in 1979, and my whole right side was crushed. I was in a coma for 4 days.
Wow.
And they told me I'd never walk again. They were going to amputate this arm. And when I came out of that coma, I was a completely different person.
Yep.
That was my reboot.
Wow.
And I came home in a wheelchair. And I said I wanted to be an artist. It's something I wanted to be my whole life. Prisoners of Our Own Beliefs, right? Something I want to be my whole life. You'll never make any money being an artist. So I never did it.
Right.
I got into mixed martial arts, and I fought in MMA. And so when I came back and I said I want to be an artist, they said, you'll go broke. And it was the first time in my life I ever stood up to people and I said, I'm not only broke, I'm broken.
Wow.
I'm doing this. That was my focus, my drive, and my passion. I created 3 companies, and we made millions of dollars in those companies.
Wow.
All from a guy who couldn't read or write.
Right.
When I came back and started my new company that I sold to actually move to Rhode Island, we had 7 employees in a 4,500 square foot facility with downdraft routers and in-house, you could drive a car in-house downdraft spray booths and that, it got so big, because I'm more of a hands-on guy. I like hand carving, I like hand lettering, you know, because that's the artist in me.
Yes.
It got so big it was driving me crazy, so I brought in 2 partners and left.
What a lot of things going on there, even the mixed martial arts. I didn't even know that you had done that. That sounds pretty interesting.
Yeah, I used to teach children, and mine was more philosophy driven.
Yes.
And that you respect people, and you only fight if you're absolutely forced to fight, and if you render somebody unconscious or you hurt them and you're not in danger, you stay with them to make sure that they are all right.
Wow, that's great. Because a lot of times, I've thought about that, you know, as a fan of the sport of MMA, mixed martial arts, but sometimes you take a second gut check and you're like, wow, this is pretty brutal stuff, you know? And like,
oh, it is.
Yeah.
It is.
And in theory, these guys, and mostly guys, but there's also, you know, the female fighters are great, you know. If you look at it, it's a double-edged thing. Because A, it's very exciting, but B, on the downside, it is very dangerous, and people are getting, you know, hurt for exhibition and spectator, you know, voyeurship and type of thing. But going back to you, Gary, there's just so much things going on, and we haven't even gotten to the mantra of the Messier Mantra, which is we ask each guest to share a mantra, something they live by. Now with you, I could probably flip open this book and find
most of it is right in there.
But do you have something you want to share in the next couple of minutes that's a philosophy or a mantra specific to our audience, perhaps?
If I had one now, because I do a lot of energy work now,
Yeah.
I'm really connected to the earth. The electromagnetic field from the earth, that field is in us.
Yes.
It's in our food, it's in everything. And allow that into your life. Cultural programmers who program basically through television, radio, all that, train us to move in a certain direction, whether it's buying a product, whether it is buying a car, a home. There's things. They even tell us when we can celebrate football games
Yeah.
and birthdays and all that, right? And there's a card to go with that. So step away from that.
Okay.
And reconnect, ground to the earth, grow your own plants. I
Right.
don't care if they're flowers. Get your hands in the earth
Yeah.
and feel that energy, that earthy energy.
Wow.
And it will calm you down. And eat live, life-giving liquids, which are things like coconut water, lemon water. Most people, I've heard everything from 70 to 90% of the people on the planet are dehydrated.
Wow.
And that is in the lymphatic side. And once you're dehydrated, then your electrical current is off, and that's where disease comes from. And I don't use the word disease, it's dis-ease.
Yeah, I heard you say that before.
Yes.
Because you're not at ease, you're,
Right.
yeah.
And it can cause all kinds of psychological issues.
Yeah.
pH is actually an electrical current, and it's supposed to be 7.365.
Yeah.
So when you go up or down the scale, you're changing the electrical current in your body.
Wow.
So
Gary, I got to say, we're only got a minute left. I didn't want to make a quick point that you just want getting your hands dirty. Well, so many people are doing this all day.
yeah,
With the smartphone. I don't even have a smartphone. I have a relatively smartphone. But I think you're right. If people put a little more time into things like carpentry, gardening, yoga, perhaps.
Yeah, going for a
painting,
walk.
Going for a walk, painting. And I get to see you and your lovely wife, Val, sometimes walking around Wickford. So that's always good. We've just got about 30 seconds left. Is there anything you want to share real quick before we end this episode, Gary?
listen to what people are saying to you, because they're doing one of two things. They're helping you get where you want to go, or they're keeping you from where you want to go.
Okay.
And those words are extremely, extremely powerful. And if they're keeping you from going where you want to go, you need to break that wall. You need to break the chains of what they're holding you back, why they're holding you back, and get into people who will help you move forward. They're out there. There's plenty of them. And they're probably the people that you don't trust when they say that you can do it.
Right. Well, Gary Parent, thank you so much.
Thank you, Mike.
Thank you. Thank you to all the audience members who've been watching Messier Mantra. Be sure and tell your friends and family to watch your show as well. Mike Messier thanking Gary Parent once again for being our guest on this episode of Messier Mantra.